Greetings and welcome everyone to the Wolverine.com postgame show here on the Wolverine YouTube channel if you're watching live or in the podcast feed after the fact. Sorry, we're a little pushback due to some locational and technical difficulties here. Anthony Broome here with Ryan Van Bergen as we are after every Michigan game. And like the last few, this was a Michigan win. They stun Alabama again, 19-13 to win the ReliaQuest Bowl, moved to 8-5 on the season. And it came down to, it was almost the exact same scenario as the Rose Bowl. Needed to stop Jalen Milroe and the Alabama offense on fourth down, and they did. Remarkable win. I mean, another game where you're a multi-score underdog, but you just find a way to get it done. As shorthanded as they've been all year. Cannot be more impressed with the fight, especially the defensive effort. Wink Martindale, the job that he's done. These aren't meaningless bowl games. They might not mean a lot, but they aren't meaningless. And for a program like Michigan right now, you come off Sherrone Moore's first year, 8-5. You beat Ohio State again. You keep all the trophies in house. You win your rivalry games, and to end it this way, it just it's a mixed bag in terms of what happened in game. But to find a way to get the job done, and hey, everyone who said that Alabama would have given the college football playoff a little more juice, well, they couldn't even beat Michigan today. Hell of a job by Sherrone Moore and this Michigan staff.
It was a great job by Sherrone Moore, great job by Wink Martindale, and great job by these guys that I'm sure they heard, just like we all did, about how lopsided this could potentially be. And seeing the 39 sit-outs that I think were between the two teams, that there may not be a lot of emphasis or importance placed on this game, but watching that game, there's no doubt in my mind it was important to these guys. It was important to these guys. It was important to Sherrone Moore because it kind of sets a precedent and sets the tone, not just for the end of this season, but I think also acts kind of as a catalyst for where you're going as a program. And to me, what you saw today, you saw some depth and development. You saw some guys on the defensive line that maybe you hadn't heard their last name before, but showed up today and played really well. Same thing in the secondary. I mean, all over the field. We could go position by position, as I'm sure we will, but all across the board, guys that had probably been chomping at the bit, guys that have probably grinded week in, week out, just waiting for an opportunity, got opportunities today. And I think they played against Bama's best. I think we got a good Bama team, and they had a lot of guys playing that maybe otherwise wouldn't have played if it wasn't an important bowl game. So very excited for this team and to see the intensity, the passion, the physicality, the brand of football that was played today has me all sorts of excited about what next year is going to hold for us.
Yeah, there was a grit to it, in a way that, it's been there in a lot of these Michigan games, but the way that they were just able to rally and make the next play and the mistakes that they did make to not let them snowball like Jalen Milroe did. They spotted you 16 points right off the bat, pretty much, with all the turnovers in the first quarter. It looked like this was heading towards a romp, but, again, Alabama was going to have a push in them. They did push, and Michigan's defense pushed back and ultimately found a way to seal the game. So we'll do what we do every week. We'll run through the offense. We'll run through defense. We will discuss our game balls, probably take a few questions, and then get out of here. A little tighter than most of these post-game shows have been because there's no game to speak about next. Maybe we circle back and do some kind of catch up and looking ahead to next year. But for now, the season is over, sitting at 8-5, and that's a pretty good spot to be in. Something about that last month of the season and then the last few weeks of bowl prep kind of push this to the next level in a make or break moment. And, just shout out to Sherrone Moore and his program for that. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this episode, we are brought to you, of course, by our friends over at My Perfect Franchise. You guys have heard us talk about them for years at this point. Andy Luedecke is an amazing partner to us. He's going to help you get into the franchise business. You can book time with him on his website. Head on over to myperfectfranchise.com. Book a meeting with him. It's not going to cost you anything to chat with Andy. Super friendly guy, super informative guy. You can give him a call at 404-973-9901 or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Well, I think usually we go offense, defense. I think we go defense, offense today because this was the defense that won them this game, finding a way to force those 3 turnovers, finding a way to get off the field in some of those critical fourth down moments early in the game, and then obviously the last drive of the game. And Alabama played all of its guys. Jalen Milroe wanted to play to put more stuff on tape for the NFL. A lot of their guys that probably are going to the NFL suited up in this game. You got Alabama's best today, and you bested them for, I say, the second year in a row, but both of these games happened in the calendar year of 2024. We've talked about before how it's felt like Wink Martindale has found a way to make the big adjustment to the college game and maybe even just simplify things a little bit because everyone's been playing a little bit faster. But to do what they did today without, they haven't been with Will Johnson, but no Mason Graham, no Kenneth Grant, those guys that pretty much single-handedly won you the Ohio State game. This was a three-level tremendous effort outside of some stuff at the end of the first half.
It was amazing. I mean, Jalen Milroe, there's no way, I kept thinking, there's no way that Jalen Milroe doesn't have some demons that live in his head rent-free from the Pasadena experience that was the Rose Bowl last year, or this year, I'm sorry, misspeaking, this year, same year. But if you remember that game, we were on him right away, early and often, in his head, physical with him, and it definitely shook him up and made him play out of character from what they had seen from the season leading up to that bowl game. And I thought today was a repeat of the same thing, not even with weather inclement inclement weather that impacted the game. But Jalen Milroe, us getting to him, and credit to Wink Martindale, but us getting to him with pressures that were, 4, 5, sometimes 6 guys, but getting to him from different directions, showing him different looks with twist. It got his eyes down to the rush. It made him miss wide open receivers later in the game that definitely could have hurt us bigger. But huge credit to the front guys that got the job done. Because like you said, we're missing so many guys that are just leaving for NFL and pursuing greener pastures. But you could easily have looked and said that maybe Michigan would see some fall off on the defensive line, and totally not the case. Obviously we had Derek Moore had an amazing game on the edge. He's been waiting for, I think, an opportunity to see a drop back pass or hold on to it too long. And credit to him to what he did, because he was aggressive and relentless all day. I thought TJ Guy played a little bit of stand-up backer as well as out on the edge, and I thought he played really well. He's a guy that I think consistently is just right there from turning the corner and being someone that's making spectacular plays that we see. And he's just had a couple glimpses of that. So it's nice to see that he's developed. But overall, the secondary, I mean, how many times did Jalen Milroe have to hold for 4, 5, 6 seconds? Because coverage was fantastic all the way through third progression. And even if it wasn't, by the time he got to third progression, Jalen Milroe scared. So defensively, and then, I mean, rushing yards, we can go on and on, but rushing yards, we gave up, what did we give up in rushing? We gave up, I think, under 175 rushing yards to Alabama, something like that. But I mean, just a tremendous effort from guys that everybody would have considered had no business on the field with this Alabama offense at one point. And two fingers, you know which ones, to anybody who said that, because this defense is deep. Wink Martindale's got them playing well, and I'm worried for any offense that has to see us next year, because we just won 2 games with 2 offenses that were explosive that only could put up 13 and 10. So good luck, everybody else.
Yeah, maybe eventually between Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Day, someone will find a way to hang a combined 100 points on this Michigan defense. It has not happened yet. Derek Moore, I want to park on him for a second, because he's a guy that, it seems like he'll be back. An announcement was like unofficial, and then the collective had tweeted out he was coming back, and then they took it down. So maybe just kind of dotting some I's, crossing some T's there. That was the game today where you almost wonder, like, did he play too good? Like, were there a lot of NFL scouts watching that game? You're hoping that they change the channel to whatever else was on the Sun Bowl or whatever. But it felt like him all season long. And you and I may have talked about this a few times. I talked about it on yesterday's show. It felt similar to, before Aiden Hutchinson became Aiden Hutchinson. And I'm not making the one-to-one comparison here, but, he was a guy who would generate a lot of pressures, but not a lot of those sack numbers. And I think that's kind of the year we saw to Derek Moore. You felt like, though, at some point, you get that one, what's the old olive in the jar comparison, where one of them falls out and they start coming in bunches. Today, they came in bunches. He was incredible. He was everywhere. And we get up to the press box and they hand out, this unofficial lineup card. And we knew that they were going to be down a ton of guys. And you look at the starting lineup and you look at, the guys that they had out there, and you're like, you know what? Like, we've seen a lot of these guys make plays for this football team. So there's definitely a path for them to kind of muck this up and make it interesting. And they were able to do that.
Yeah, there had opportunities throughout the season, but I think the big role and seeing, what shoes will you need to fill in the season upcoming, and we got to see a lot of that. And to me, that's kind of what I was thirsting for as we kind of talk about what this matchup brings and what can you get out of a matchup and what's the importance and significance of the bowl games is what is the next guy up and what kind of capacity is he going to operate in. And I know we're just talking defensive, but even offensively, as we transition to that side of the ball, like we had guys that made plays that we think were right on the edge of breaking out, but just maybe had a guy in front of them or didn't get the opportunities throughout the year. So defensively, just stifling and consistently stifling. That's the other thing to give a lot of credit towards is you can get out there and make a play for a series or, play a good quarter. But these guys played 4 good quarters of defense. It came right down to the last drive. And I'm telling you what, you go to any sportscaster, someone who follows college football, and you think Jalen Milroe marching down the field, 2 timeouts, 1 minute left. Do you think they score a touchdown on that drive? 9 out of 10 guys are going to say yes. And I got to be honest, the way Michigan's defense played, I was pretty comfortable watching that last drive Terrence Pryor because you got to get in the end zone. And this team has done a really good job of making that challenging the last couple of weeks. So defensively, I think there's nothing but excitement for where we're going with this team.
We'll just do the game bowl now. Derek Moore, any objections to that?
None. Great game.
Love to see it. Let's move over to offense now. Again, it was, listen, we know what they are. So I'm not going to rehash the quarterback situation. If you're a Michigan fan that's going to have nightmares about that, I have great news for you. This is the last game where Michigan's going to have that type of deficit at quarter. So good for them. They got through it. They got to 8 wins this year. But then, you come into this game and you're not going to have Donovan Evans. You're not going to have Kalel Mullins. Colston Loveland opted out. And that was a group that already was one of the, 5-10 worst offenses in college football this year. So you felt that your path to victory was exactly what we saw on the field today. It was going to be generating multiple turnovers. It was going to be, field position that lent itself to a couple easy points. And yeah, would you have loved to see an extra touchdown somewhere? Absolutely. But, you go up 16-0, and maybe you can make the argument that, you go up 20-0, even just one of those field goals goes through. That game might have been over in the first half. Maybe you do see Alabama start to, play some other guys, and maybe some guys say, you know what, no, I'm done. The offense, especially Jordan Marshall. I mean, I'm not going to fixate on the negatives because we've talked about that all year. A couple guys to me stood out today. First and foremost, Jordan Marshall. I think, you bring in Justice Haynes from Alabama. He's going to be in that 1-2 punch next year, but Jordan Marshall's there too. And he might be RB1. He's a guy to me that I think, remember, he didn't get here until the summer, and then he was injured earlier. So you don't have the same amount of reps. You don't have the same amount of time in the weight room. But when you watch him on the field, and I'm not saying he's Blake Corum, but he runs a lot like Blake did. And he's the MVP of the game, 23 rushes, 100 yards. That's a building block for them.
He's a building block, and I think he's a guy that can fit the mold in the brand, because I think that's one thing that we referenced a lot at the beginning of the year was when Sherrone Moore took the reins, and through the first 3, 4, 5 games, we had a identity crisis as a team, especially as an offense. And of course, we had the quarterback carousel and not knowing who was going to be able to lead the team at that position. And that's a huge element, obviously. But I feel like this team, we misused Donovan Edwards early. Call it what it is. We used to use him on first and 10s and 2nd and 9s and try and run him between the guards, and that's not where he's going to excel. And then you got Kalel Mullins, who's coming in on 3rd and 5, and we're swinging him out, throwing the pass to him. I just feel like we utilized improperly, which is it's an affordable mistake, but that's something that happened. And I feel like Jordan Marshall is a guy that I feel like Sherrone Moore can kind of put a stamp of this is our style of running back, and now we need an offensive line that can block to make this style of running back successful. Then we need tight ends that can block for this type of running back but can also run play actions, and then we need our quarterback. It's the first domino of many, and the first domino is identifying what is your brand of football. And I think Jordan Marshall, the way he played today, 4 yards in a cloud of dust, and getting more when more was available, even though the entire defense was keying on run for the majority of the game. you have to be impressed. It's a 100-yard in performance, but you have to be impressed with the performance of Jordan Marshall, and looking forward to seeing him more when hopefully there's a little bit more diversity to our offense and what we're capable of doing.
Yeah, of course. Talk about all the guys they were down. Also, obviously down an offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, which I know people, you'll take the low hanging fruit and do your thing with that in the comments. But the fact is that you prepared over the last month or so with an interim OC and a graduate assistant or an analyst coaching your quarterbacks. So I'm not surprised it looked the way it did. Another guy, as we kind of have the stats up on the screen here, Fred Moore, looks like a guy that has a role on this team next year. It's so hard to evaluate the wide receivers this season. I mean, we know that obviously there wasn't enough there, and they've added Donovan McCulley in the portal. They're going to bring in at least one, maybe two more guys there. I thought Fred Moore today sort of staked his case as someone that I think is a candidate to pop, with better quarterback play, with better play calling. And again, 3 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. In any other game, people just kind of gloss that over. But that's half their passing offense today. So nice work from him. Again, another kind of classic Samaj Morgan stat line, 4 catches for 5 yards. And that's not his fault. I mean, they don't block these bubble screens all that well. I don't even know if that's something he's going to ever really be particularly good at, but did enough there. It sucked to see Davis Warren go down. The guy's been a warrior. But oddly enough, and I don't know what the stat is at this point in terms of the wins, but they have not lost since 2015 when passing for less than 100 yards in a game, which is remarkable. I mean, a lot of times that means maybe their run game is cooking, but that didn't even really happen today. Just they did a good enough job, and that's all you can really say about them today.
I would agree. I just was laughing because I'm pretty sure Frederick Moore may have, and someone will have to check me on this, but the only back shoulder fade of the year, and especially one that went for 20 plus yards. So I agree. He has the first up in terms of let's break out as a receiver in 2025, because as a group, again, I echo what you say and don't blame the guys in the room for the performance of the receivers, but regardless of who's responsible, it has to be better in 2025. And the good news is the basement is below sea level this year in terms of what the wide receiver production was. So we should be able to go up from this low of a platform, and there should be plenty of room for Michigan receivers to come in and make an impact. So I'm looking forward to that. I think we might have Anthony muted, so I'm not 100% sure. But one other thing that I did want to mention while we're talking receivers was the tight ends, because I thought that, one of the biggest things that I have as a question mark is what are we going to do to replace Colston Loveland? Because as abysmal as our offense may have been this season, Colston Loveland was a buoy out in choppy waters that we could grab onto and have some sort of rhythm, if you want to call it that, in our passing game. So the tight end position is going to be crucial. And I think Klein has done a really good job coming up and kind of raising the ranks. But it's one of those positions that I want to see continue to develop, see what we can do with that position, because we've had a lot of success with the tight end position because of the brand of football that we're playing. We need to have solid players at the tight end position. So I'm excited to see where that position goes with some of the guys that either we may be laying in the transfer portal or who Sherrone's more recruits. But tight end, I feel like, is going to be one of those spots that is ready for someone to come out, emerge, and be an offensive superstar for us next year.
What did you make of the offensive line today? Didn't have Miles Hinton. It was more or less kind of the group you've seen, but without Hinton, Link starts at left tackle. Andrew Sprague, a true freshman, gets the start at right tackle. And I'll be honest with you, some of the gaffes that I noticed today were more on the interior again. I didn't notice a whole lot going on at tackle.
It was surprising to me as well, because I have not been quiet in some of my criticisms of performance for Link, and always try to be careful and cautious about criticizing the guys that are wearing the helmets. But there's just times where he definitely missed assignments or, wasn't able to get to a block that left us exposed. And pass pro, he was very iffy at right tackle, but there's a chance I wouldn't know any better that he's much more comfortable at left tackle. And I think someone that doesn't know football might think, well, if he's not good at right tackle, you can't move him over to left because that's a more important position. But if he's a better player on that side, that's what matters. Some guys are much more comfortable pass setting with their left foot back. Some people feel stronger with their right hand as their inside hand in pass pro. So it's all, dependent upon the athlete. So I liked Link, moved over to left tackle. I actually kind of felt some invigorated spirit that this guy could be someone that contributes, because at first that wasn't my impression this year. So kind of a redemption tour for him. And then at right tackle, I thought that our young guy did really well. I think he's 6'8", 305. And I think the reason you don't see him is because he's pretty tall already and he plays pretty high. But you could tell he was making an effort to stay low, to get good on push on some of his blocks. Didn't give up much on the pass pro. So overall, I thought you saw a lot of good from the O-line considering where we had been. Progression, development, that's what we're looking for. So that was there.
I guess let me ask you this, because I'm kind of scraping the barrel for offensive things to talk about outside of Jordan Marshall's game. But, knowing that you've completely transformed this quarterback room in the portal, you have brought in a new play caller. Like, is there anything you can really glean from a game like this? Or is it just, hey, you put some good stuff on film, we'll pick it back up in spring ball and see if you can build on it?
I think as a fan, probably not, but I think as a coach, I think you can look at this game and feel more confident in your analysis of what you corrected throughout the season. There's no way that Sherrone Moore opened this year, and no coach at any high level opens a year and thinks they make no mistakes week 1 to week 2, week 2 to week 3, week 3 to week 4. That's not how it goes. You're full of mistakes. It's a game of golf. You're trying to limit how many mistakes you make so you can be one of the winners at the end. And I feel like Sherrone Moore as a head coach, he developed. I thought I saw it took longer than I wanted, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But defensively, I think we developed for sure. You can point to a lot of progression and development there. And then I think offensively, you saw guys develop where we could. I think the vacancy at the quarterback position and the inability to produce at that position through all the guys in the room is so hurtful and harmful to receivers, tight ends, even running backs, because now you can key in. So it's been hard to evaluate the progression, but the utilization has been better. Cycling offensive linemen, finding better spots for them to be in so that they can be more successful and more productive. Staying in keeping certain situations the same with the orgy run package and keeping Bredesen in, even though I thought he was a key that some of these decisions I think that, he made, Sherrone Moore made, and Wink Martindale made, that improved this team and progressed this team, both from strategy standpoint and then also from a personnel standpoint. All those things indicate like these guys in their first year are getting it figured out. Everybody should be confident that this next season should be a step up from what we saw this year, and the way we finished this year, that has me super excited.
I want to piggyback off that in a second, because that's where I was going next in terms of how we view this season. But offensive game ball, I think I know who it'll be, but the floor is yours.
I'm going Jordan Marshall. There was a thought to give one to Bredesen just because, but I think I'm going to leave it alone, and I'm going to give it to Jordan Marshall because, I mean, let's think about it too. The physicality of this game, because it pleases me as a guy that was a hit you in your face defensive lineman type. But when you think about the SEC, you think about good football, and you think about some of the guys that are the bullies of the SEC. Bama is on the list of bullies in the SEC. They're definitely not one of the softer or the finesse programs of the SEC. So when you go out and you play your second string defensive line against some of their better offensive linemen, and you get nothing but penetration and pushback, and they don't have any rushing yards, and then you run the ball even though they don't have a quarterback, and they know you're running the ball, and you still can execute. We were a physical team that pushed around a bully, and we did that for 4 quarters. And so I thought that was amazing. But Jordan Marshall, the way you did it, again, I thought you were the brand. You were the face of the brand. So game ball for me.
Absolutely. All right, I want to go back to what you said about how you view this season in general. I think I came into this game not thinking there would be anything to really glean from it. I guess most of that I'll just admit, because I didn't think Michigan would win, and I thought they would lose somewhat handily. So it's kind of easy to poo-poo that. But they did win, and they did find a way to get to 8 wins, and it's another reason why it can be foolish at times to plant flags halfway through a season, a third of the way through the season. Hell, this year, 10 games into a season, Um, it's a case to be made for why the only thing that matters now is what comes next. And sitting at 5-5, they won their next three games. They did, destroyed a team that they should have destroyed, Northwestern. You grit out a win against Ohio State. You hang on for a win against Alabama. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, there are some red flag things in there. I mean, we're not going to talk about it as much because they won, but I didn't think the end of the first half was handled very well by Sherrone Moore. And I think there are some game management things that we saw throughout the year that, man, you got to learn from that. It's got to be a little bit better. But the way that not only did the staff not lose this team sitting at 5-5, it seemed like that they really sort of re-bought in and sort of reset themselves during that second bye week. And it set them up now to be, I know one of the teams of the offseason. So with the theme being the only thing that matters now is what happens next, how do you think this serves as a jumping off point?
Before we started this, I had thought about the summary of the season, and one of the things that came to mind that I was unwilling to share at first because I feel like it could get picked apart. But oh well, trolls have at it. I think this might be the best 8-win season from Michigan that I can ever think of, but maybe as a team. And obviously the lens is biased, but when you consider what was lost from the year previous, how many guys had to get their feet wet in terms of coaching and in terms of playing and figure it out on the fly, in terms of going into strength of schedule being, I believe, number one in college football and playing against the people that we had to play against this season, and finding a way to, like you said, get the wheels back on, get a recommitment from guys in an era where it's about NIL, it's about winning your conference championship, it's about national championships. And don't get me wrong, it is about that, but it's also about how you do it. And to see these guys buy back in at the end of October and come through November and win the games that they won in the fashion in which they won them. And then the excitement with the recruitment news and the energy that it feels like this program is picking up as we close out. I think this might be the best 8-5 Michigan team, not in terms of how well they played, but in terms of what they were capable of doing. I think these guys deserve a special spot in Michigan tradition. And I understand it's a rich tradition of success, and 8 wins usually doesn't register as a success. But in my book, a lot of these guys, these seniors, they deserve a big commendation for what they were able to do. And I think Sherrone Moore, Wink Martindale, all these guys deserve the opportunity to pursue greatness, because I think it's coming for these guys. I can't guarantee it, but I feel like these guys have that opportunity for them.
Yeah, and now it is a puzzle more so than it's ever been, because you have to recruit your own roster now. You have to recruit the transfer portal. You have to recruit the high school ranks. So never more has it been more important to find a way to build. And one of the easiest building blocks is to win big games. And they've won more big games this year than some teams that on paper, and not, we're much more talented, much more balanced. Then think about some of those Jim Harbaugh teams that didn't win the Big Ten, didn't make the college football playoff. I'm not saying this team is better than them, but what would they have done with Indiana's schedule? Would they be in the playoff? Like, I don't know. I know that when you look at Michigan's schedule and you have Texas and there's the Indiana schedule on the screen. You have Texas and you have Oregon, Indiana, Ohio State. You played 4 playoff teams this year. And I think, because I don't think Northwestern made a bowl game, I think every single team you played, Michigan State. How could I forget? Michigan State didn't go to a bowl game. I guess I've gotten used to it. All those teams, that's a competitive as hell schedule. And it is a little more forgiving next year. And I'm not going to do the win-loss game with that yet, because we don't know who's going to be on this roster or not. But, to set this as your floor, with knowing everything that we do now. And I don't like playing if I had told you back in the summer that they'd have done this, and that. But now that you look at the totality of the picture, you come off a national championship, you lose. I have no issue saying it, the best football coach in the history of Michigan football, one of the best coaches in football, period. When you see what he's doing with the Chargers now, you have all these members of the staff to replace. You have all these key contributors, especially on offense, that simply could not be replaced. To find a way to do this with this group in this season, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, there was a spot, that Illinois game was a low point where I think we were questioning whether this team could make a bowl or not. We were questioning, whether the Northwestern game was a gimme. And to find a way to rally back from that is they did a remarkable job. And, you tip your hat. Of course, there are missed opportunities along the way, but, knowing that this was going to be, the potential for a really rough transition year was there. And it was rough and it was rocky, but the last month or so was incredibly rewarding for them. And it was good to see that pulling them from a pretty dark place, because it was a dark place, especially after that Illinois game. I don't think people realize just kind of how low morale was after that. I have no questions about Sherrone Moore's ability to get guys to buy in. Now he just needs better players. And, NIL's taking a big step forward. They've got the opportunity to add in the portal. I don't know how you can walk out of this being anything but excited for what can come next year. And guess what? It's likely you're starting a freshman quarterback next year. That could be a little rocky. I mean, look at Nebraska this year. Look at how it's gone for other teams. But you know what? You'd rather have the bird in hand than not. And this was a very good first year for Sherrone Moore in Michigan.
I agree. I think that there's nothing but good things coming, and it's the paradox of both halves of the season. If you look at the first few games, Texas and Oregon in the front half of the season, and we thought USC would be probably a little better than they were. But you look at those two teams that are in the playoff and challenging for, top spot, and realistically, both those games, we were never probably going to win those games. We're never in them. Then we go to the end of the season and we play two other teams, that should be in the playoff or are close to playoff in Ohio State and Alabama. And then you see the difference between those two games, and not just the difference in the score, but the difference in the tone of how it was played, the physicality, the aggressiveness, the physical nature of the both offensive and defensive line, the confidence that the teams played with. To me, that's your mirror. That's your litmus right there. What was your Oregon and your Texas performance like versus your Ohio State and your Alabama performance like? And which way were you going? Did you go from the Ohio State game down to the Texas? No, we're trending up. Everything's looking up, and super excited, super supportive, and ready to see what 2025 can bring.
All right, we will take a few questions to end the show. I'm going to need producer Megan to help me out there because I cannot pull up anything on my screen. Before we do the questions really quick, I want to talk about our friends over at 5 Star Fans. We've been talking about NIL. We've been talking about building a roster through recruiting and all those types of things. If you head over to 5-starfans.com right there, using that link below, they're going to give you $5 to use on your favorite player, whatever recruit is on there. And if they don't come to Michigan, you get your money back. So just another way for people to find ways to get involved with NIL, get some elite talent into Michigan. Get your $5 today to send to your favorite player when you sign up at 5-starfans.com. All right, let's take a couple questions here. We have I believe, a $10 super chat from Holy Reaver 97. And he says, or they say, because we're not sure, it's time to start considering that Sherrone Moore may be an elite head coach. I don't know yet. There's a lot, again, back to the theme. The only thing that matters now is how you build off of this. But you look at his resume now, and he's got wins over, and again, I know last year's team was technically, it's Jim Harbaugh's team, but he's outcoached James Franklin. He's outcoached Ryan Day twice, outcoached Kalen DeBoer today, just in terms of having the guys ready to play. I'm not ready to say elite yet, but I think you have a rising star that can only get better from here. So if you want to say one of the elite risers in the profession, I don't think I have an issue with that.
He's got the gold currency, which is the ability to win the big game. And thank God we're not on the other side of that coin. But I know what it's like, and we've been there before as a fan base, that there does seem to be mental blocks in some of these situations with coaches that can always get their team into the top 10, James Franklin, but can't seem to win the big one, Ryan Day. And so when those types of things happen, you get frustrated as a fan base, and it's tough because you go 10-win season, 11-win season, but you don't beat your rivals, and you don't go to the Big Ten championship, and you don't go, to Elmo Steakhouse and get those steaks. But these to me, one of the things that I feel like is if you have it, hold on to it. If you have a head coach that can show up and get your guys ready to prepare for bowl games and big games, if you can win those, you can figure out how to win when you go to Washington next time. You can figure out how to win when you go into Illinois. Those things are correctable and fixable. There's no excuse for losing them. But I don't know that you can teach people how to win the big game and how to win the bowl game. That might just become you're born with it. And Sherrone Moore, I'm feeling real good about his genetics, that he's got born winner in those genes because he's proven it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no greater experience. Well, there's no greater teacher one than failing. So I think the most successful people in any profession fail a lot and learn from it. But experience too. I mean, in order to have a team that's capable of winning games, you have to have a roster full of guys that have won or have learned how to win big games. And thankfully, a lot of holdovers from the last 3 years were on this roster, whether they were big time contributors or not. And now maybe some future stars were born today. Maybe Jordan Marshall next year is, a foundational piece. Winning just breeds winning. And hey, how about this for a reversal of fortune too? Uh, Michigan historically struggled in bowl games. They're 3-0 in the postseason the last 2 years. So how about that? How about that as a reversal of a trend? Let's take another question here from Yellow Shirt Guy, who says, "I just want to say thank you for finishing the year the way that you started it. Happy New Year, guys. Go Blue." Uh, I don't have much to add on that. Feels pretty darn good to. It just feels like muscle memory now. Coming on and doing these wins over Ohio State, wins over Alabama. It's all part of it now. Mr. Dave says, "Do you see any more significant additions from the transfer portal?" Yeah, I think they're going to take a couple more offensive linemen. I think they will take at least one more wide receiver. I think you'll see probably an addition at defensive tackle and at cornerback. But um, there's been some griping from people about perceived inactivity. I don't take a lack of news as a lack of activity, but this is not the only window to add guys. There's a spring portal as well. Guys in the portal can commit whenever. I think they will get a few more impact guys in here. And I guess, Ryan, what do you make of if you were to set the needs board right now? What would you have as number one?
Well, first and foremost, I need to purge my social medias and get rid of all the fake news because the amount of people that I've seen commit to Michigan through the transfer portal, I don't have any real information as to who is actually committed and can they flip? Can they be decommitted? I haven't been up on all the details of that yet. I feel like I know that we added the running back. I know we've added a receiver. And then on the defensive side of the ball, that's where I've been waiting to hear some additions that I haven't necessarily heard. I thought we maybe brought in some brother DBs from Arkansas or something like that. But if I were to make a list, I think first and foremost, offensive line. Do not ignore the position that needs help the most, the offensive line. As much as we're giving flowers to everybody because it's the end of the year and we're all excited, the offensive line was bad this year. They could have helped a quarterback maybe if we could have had some protection or some running game that was going. And there's all sorts of things that went into that. But I think it's great that we returned Crippen at center. I think Jadis is entered into the transfer portal. So center is one of my biggest concerns. If you haven't learned yet, if you don't know anything about offensive line, you need to have someone great who snaps the ball because if he doesn't do a very good job, your offense is going to struggle. So my thought is let's go find that next Remington winner. Back when we had, Olu and some of these other guys that came in for 1 year and just dominated. We need to find, I think, another guy. Crippen is good, but I do want to find another guy at center. And then I think that we need to probably have another tackle that can play either side, but I did like Link at left tackle, but I don't know that I feel good about him being the one and only left tackle option that we have. So something to consider, someone that we can have for those positions. But receiver, I think we get some guys in, that'd be great. But to be honest, let's focus on the things that I think we can improve that are part of our brand of football. I'd want to develop a passing attack and throw the ball downfield. Do not get me wrong, but to me, The main thing is the main thing. And the main thing at Michigan is the offensive line. Who's doing the blocking? How successful are they with what regularity, and who's running behind them? So I like that we got the running back. I'd like to shore up the offensive line. Defensive side, I want to make sure that we get a decent depth at defensive tackle. I think losing 2 star guys like we are this year is going to be impactful. I do like the guys behind them, but I have concerns about the departure of not only them, but Josiah Stewart as well. That's so much to lose that you got to make sure that you reload at least in some capacity there to have a similar defensive line. So I'm going to go O-line, D-line. If I can see those before the spring portal, I'm good. I feel like overall we're probably in a good spot already, but if we could see an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman here in the next few weeks, I'd be pretty excited about that.
Breaking, the former defensive lineman wants to see the team improve in the trenches. Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I actually don't hate what they have at tackle moving forward. With the guys we saw today, you have Andrew Babalola coming in as a 5-star who is going to be an early enrollee. The interior, I think, needs a lot of help. The guard play this year was disappointing, which is a drop off was going to happen when you lose a Zinter to Keegan, but that was too steep a drop off for the amount of experience in college those guys had. So we'll see what happens. I think there will be a few more impact guys. I don't really have anything else to say. We'll impact this season a little bit more down the road. We'll look ahead and all those sorts of things. But again, end 2024 the way you started it. January 1, 2024, 27-20 win over Alabama in the Rose Bowl. December 31st, 2024, a 19-13 win over Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl, in the R Bowl, 2 R Bowl wins. One of them, I'll put it this way. I'm probably not going to go back down to the field and grab some confetti from this one like I did the Rose Bowl. But a fun one regardless. Good end of the season. Hey, this program's never been about style points. Just get the win, get it done, and charge forward. And now the real fun begins. The true build begins under this new regime. So thank you guys for coming out and watching. Thanks for watching all of these this year. It's a lot of fun. I'm not in prison, by the way. There's a brick wall behind me. I'm outside of the stadium because our setup in there wasn't great. So thanks for bearing with me there as well. For Ryan Van Bergen, for our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broome. Real quick before we get out, use that promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to our site for $1. A lot of stuff coming in the portal. We'll see if there are any changes to the coaching staff. All of that, use that promo code. Get in on that today. 2 months for $1 is the best deal you're going to find anywhere. So thank you guys. We appreciate it. Like this video on your way out. Subscribe to our channel. Find us wherever you get the audio versions of your shows. And thanks again. Michigan's 8-5 and on to the off season. Thanks for watching.